Hi, I'm Alexis Noonan, and today I'm going to discuss Black economic empowerment, which I know is something we kind of briefly discussed this semester, but we didn't go into too much detail. But Black economic empowerment is essentially a policy that was enacted by the South African government to increase economic participation by all people across the board, and also to improve the overall state of the economy. And while researching this topic, I found an interesting quote from the DTI, which is the Department of Trade and Industry, and it said, "No economy can grow by excluding any part of its people, and an economy that is not growing cannot integrate all of its citizens in a meaningful way." And I thought this was really interesting because it kind of shows how economic success and growth goes hand in hand with inclusiveness. So without one, you can't have the other. And that's why this was definitely something that was necessary in South Africa. But the way that it was implemented wasn't exactly as successful as I think they planned. And we see this through when you look at the poverty and the disparity that exists in South Africa today. It definitely didn't go as planned. So a little background on Black economic empowerment. It was first introduced in 2001 as a growth strategy to improve the overall state of the economy. And it's comparable to affirmative action in the United States, which a lot of you know is an initiative that is supposed to give equal opportunities to minorities, particularly in the areas of employment and higher education. Some key objectives to this policy were to empower more Black people to own and manage enterprises, to promote human resource development of Black people, and to ensure that Black-owned enterprises benefit from government preferential treatment. And those are just a few, but those are ones that I found most interesting. The government also saw that they had to provide some sort of incentive programs and a standard framework for them to assess all the different companies across the board. So in 2007, they introduced what they called the codes of good practice. And with this came the idea of a scorecard. So essentially, this scorecard was used to assess a variety of different companies in 7 areas. The areas were ownership, management control, employment equity, skills development, preferential procurement, enterprise development, and socioeconomic procurement. And the idea was that a company would be graded in each of these areas, and the government would use this grade when considering granting licenses and issuing fees if necessary for non-compliance. So that was kind of a brief overview of some of the main purposes behind this policy and how it was implemented. What I found was that it seemed really good in theory, but the limited benefits when you look at the aftermath of it were really surprising. So when we look at South Africa today, we haven't seen that much growth in the economy. According to the CIA World Factbook, which is a resource book, the unemployment rate in 2014 for South Africa was 25%, and that was particularly prominent in Black communities, which are the very people who were supposed to benefit from Black economic empowerment. There certainly were a small group of people who were able to really benefit from this initiative, gain a lot of wealth, and become very successful, but the overwhelming amount of people still living in informal settlements and just struggling economically is just, like I said, overwhelming. I found an article in The Economist, which even had current President Jacob Zuma criticize Black economic empowerment. He said that instead of redistributing the wealth and positions to the Black majority, the policy has resulted in a few individuals benefiting a lot. And that's kind of where the corruption comes from and why South Africa today has that reputation as a very corrupt nation. Also, when we look at executive positions, which is one of the main initiatives, Blacks only hold about 4% of CEO positions, 2% of CFOs, and 36% of directors. So obviously a huge increase since the days of apartheid, but not necessarily where they wanted to be. So overall, when I was reflecting on this, I thought that this Black economic empowerment was kind of something to smooth over the infringement of human rights of apartheid. Because everyone should have the opportunity to be successful and have the same economic opportunities. However, I think that the South African government really needs to rethink how they're implementing this and change it in the future. Because if there's one thing that I think I've taken away from the QU seminar series is that as a member of our local, national, or global communities, we have the responsibility to always question things, always try to actively think about how we can bring about change. And since they haven't kind of touched this law in a while, I think it's worth it to kind of go back and look it over and see how they can revamp it in the future. And that's it. Thank you.